What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for another episode of our Bandai 1/72nd scale T70 X-Wing here on Sci-Fi Wednesdays. Last time we had a lot of fun with our S-foils. We have 4 LEDs, one in each of the engines. All the wires are nicely grouped together and they pop out there at the bottom of that pivot joint. So we are ready to see if we can get this all to work out with the fuselage. Now the wings do function in both the open and closed position, so I'm hoping to keep that functionality as much as I can. That might just mean adding a little bit of extra slack in the wires because they do move when you shift them open and shift them closed. They actually pull and kind of move the wires a little bit, so I want to have a little bit of slack in there so that it doesn't pull one of my connections apart and I have to go back in and try to resolder. So that's my one concern, but I should be able to get it to work out. Now today, I want to go ahead and move over to the fuselage, and more specifically, I want to work on the cockpit because I want to see if I can't add in one more LED, a very soft white LED at the very bottom of the footwell for the pilot. Now, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do that, but I think the best way to go ahead and proceed is to slowly go ahead and start putting together all the parts of the cockpit and the fuselage. I want to see how these go together, do some dry fitting, do some cleanup on certain parts, and just see if I can't try to fit one more LED in the very front of that cockpit. So let's go ahead and jump into our first time lapse. We're going to do a real rough assembly. We're going to put the S-foils aside and just see what we can do with the fuselage and the cockpit. Let's get going, guys. See what we can do. All right, everybody, we are back, and that actually went really well. So I have a good idea of how the fuselage goes together, and I'm pretty sure we can fit one more LED in the very front of this cockpit. So initially I thought I would take the wires along the side of the cockpit tub, but that would require trenching into the plastic and it might interfere with the way the fuselage goes together on the sides. So instead, I think we're going to go ahead and take the wire directly up the inside of the cockpit tub itself. Now the reason I'm doing that is because, well, there's a very nice path, very straight shot from the tip of the cockpit right about here, where I can glue down that little SMD to the very back of the fuselage where I will have the rest of the connections for the engine LEDs. So that should be pretty decent. Now I think what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to drill a very tiny little hole in the very bottom corner of the cockpit tub on the inside. Let's go ahead and pull off a couple of parts just to make sure I don't accidentally drill into something or nick something I don't want nicked. And then we'll be able to go ahead and drill one very tiny hole in the very back of the cockpit. Just use my pin vise with a little drill bit chucked in the end of that. So let's go ahead and just give a little bit of pressure. We're going to give a couple of rotations and we should go ahead and just pop right through this rear corner section. And then we'll see how we look. There we go. Let's go ahead and back that out. And we'll pop the cockpit tub right off of the fuselage. Yeah, there it is. So we have a nice little hole right there in the bottom of the cockpit. It's going to be hidden between the fuselage and the tub itself, so no problem there. Let's go ahead and take our drill bit, drill back through the other way, and then we'll take an X-Acto knife and just start opening up that just a little bit more, I think. The idea is to go ahead and just have this slide right along the very edge of that cockpit tub and poke right out through that hole, and we are good to go. Minimal construction. We don't have to tear apart a bunch of parts or remove things or cut off locating tabs like I did with my ATST. This should be a direct shot right to the end, and I can tap everything together with our positive and negative leads. So that should be perfect. We'll go ahead and bring our jeweler file out. We'll open up that opening just a little bit more to make sure there's no edges or no nicks or whatnot that can catch the wire. And then we'll go ahead and put this wire right on through that opening and see how we look. So let's go ahead and fish it right on through there. And it looks like we've got it through. All right. So now I think what I can do is once I get the cockpit more or less painted and weathered, I can then glue this little LED to the very front of this cockpit tub. And it's going to be hidden by both the front hood and also the side coping. So you really shouldn't see any of the wires, at least that's my hope. Just to double check, let's go ahead and put that pilot back in, and that actually hides the wire quite nicely. We'll put the top coping right around the pilot itself, and let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, so that works really, really well. There's not a lot of space in this cockpit anyway, so just having these two tiny wires just go right along the edge, you don't even notice them, is perfect. So I think we are good to go ahead and start working on the cockpit. And the first thing I want to tackle is the rear decking right behind the pilot. Now, right behind the pilot, there's a bit of an open area and there's not a lot of detail or action going on there. So I'm going to go ahead and add in some wires and cables to bring some life to the cockpit itself. I'm going to go ahead and prime everything with Stalnares Gray and then come back with some NATO Black and overcoat the entire cockpit with that. Then I can come in and I can start dry brushing. We can start painting up some details, go ahead and paint up the screen, add in some buttons and details, and then paint up that pilot. And hopefully that will put us in a good position for next episode. So let's kick it in with that second time lapse and see what else we can do. Alright everybody, we are back and we have a really nice looking cockpit. 1/72nd scale, so it's very tiny, not a lot of detail, but I was able to add in the screen, a couple of buttons, give some dry brushing, and I think overall it looks pretty cool. The pilot came out decently as well. We did go ahead and add in that LED. I just used a little bit of hot glue, string it right on through to the back of the fuselage, and that worked well. Just a little bit of hot glue to go ahead and keep that SMD right there, pointing up and forward. I gave a little bit of a test run, and it is bright, but it's not that bright. I might consider adding a little bit of maybe some reflection in there, maybe put some foil or something just kind of tucked in so it shoots the light backwards a little bit more, but we'll have to see once they get everything kind of buttoned up. As you can see though, they're just one little SMD. The wires just travel right on the inside of the cockpit between the pilot and the sidewall, and then pokes out through the bottom section of the cockpit, through the firewall, through another bulkhead, and then into that rear fuselage section where all the wires will make their connection. Yeah, not too bad guys. Now next episode we're going to have to go ahead and come back and see how these wings will go ahead and fit down inside and get more or less everything kind of buttoned up. So I think that's going to be a really fun process. We also have to go ahead and figure out the stand for this. I thought about maybe I could just poke all the wires down through this opening right down here, but I need to go ahead and figure out how to kind of feed everything through that opening. Now I do have plenty of ribbon cables, so in theory I could just slide up a couple ribbon cables and get everything nicely soldered together, but I might just then just take 2 wires only, go up through a stand and up into the bottom of the fuselage and just solder everything together that way. I really don't know what to do quite yet, but so far so good guys. I'm loving how this pilot turned out. I really like the cockpit. That little extra wire back there added a lot of detail, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I think that is a good place to stop for today. So until our next episode, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. And we'll see you back here on episode number 4 of our T70 X-Wing by Bandai in 1/72nd scale. Thanks so much everybody. We'll see you soon.